Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, where we talk about complex supernatural stuff. Still here in Kiev, Ukraine, still taking this tough as nails class. Been a little bit busy lately out here, but I'm finally in my own apartment. I'm not sharing a dorm with people or in strange Airbnbs with finicky owners. None of that. I have my own space to myself now, which feels amazing. I can do things like speak into a microphone late at night. I don't have to worry about who I'm pissing off. So it feels great. So anyway, in this video, we have a quote here by Pim van Lommel, who is one of the major NDE researchers, and it says, "Death is nothing other than a different way of being with an enhanced and broadened consciousness, which is everywhere at once because it is no longer tied to a body." And on one hand, I like the quote, and on the other hand, I don't like the quote, because it is sort of this same narrative that, for one thing, it implies that you pass away, you become all-knowing consciousness. There is no limitations. You're everywhere at once, and yet you have no body. And certainly these are things that happen, and these are like consciousness states that anybody has access to. So what we're looking at, and it's the difference between macro consciousness and micro consciousness. So if you expand your consciousness out into the macro level, then it can be this way. But to live your day-to-day life, you have to have the micro consciousness. And experienced people in certain groups or monks, yogis, have the ability to go from micro to macro. Even in this world, it's not exclusive to people who pass away. So that being said, the issue with this type of thing is that it leaves out the whole concept of still being you, still having a life, individuality, even personality. Like, it doesn't address those things. It's like it's an idea that's not put into full context. So it keeps creating this narrative that we die and become formless, orbs of light, TM, trademark, who have nothing to do with the existence they used to have. Okay, so those of us who do afterlife research, I have a few books out about this. We try to look at the broader context. And I am as a journalist. I'm not like a PhD like Pim van Lommel. I'm just a guy. But I report information. And so what I try to do with the information I report is I look at the big picture, the big context of information, right? And put it all together. And when you look at that context of spirit communication, it becomes pretty clear that it's not just this, as the afterlife isn't just this state of consciousness and then that's it. There's a lot more going on. And sometimes people read quotes like this. If you're a widower, if you've lost a child, for example, you might read something like this and it causes anxiety. And sure enough, it was also upsetting some people in the comments. And because again, there isn't the right context. So this got me thinking about something. What it got me thinking was that a lot of this idea about the formless consciousness stuff, it comes out of NDE literature. It comes out of people like Pim van Lommel and Bruce Grace, and a lot of people who are really influential and great in that field. But it's kind of like it doesn't have the full context that we get through like spirit communication. So I think a lot of people get sort of misinterpreted ideas about what the afterlife could be like. Now I find this a little bit strange though, because I have a theory that if you read NDEs, it's not necessarily just this formless consciousness stuff. It's also has elements of going into astral conditions, very physical conditions, having kind of solid existences, that all these things that spirit communicators talk about, that we experience through out-of-body experiences, like all this stuff does happen in the NDE, and yet it's kind of underreported, which is weird. And that being said, I thought I'd take some time to read some completely random NDEs by going to the NDERF website, and let's see what is it promoting this narrative? Are more NDEs than I thought basically just saying that we become formless consciousness after we die? Or are they showing the actual afterlife? Because I always contend being formless consciousness is not an afterlife, it's being formless consciousness. There's no life that goes with that in a sense, because you have, I mean, you're not doing a job or interacting with other people or anything like that. I mean, the whole concept of merging back with the universe or going back into God's womb means that you're decreating yourself. So there is the moment of creation, you become you, and then this is a moment of kind of like an obliteration. And again, it ties in heavily to Eastern or religious ideas. But I'm wondering if maybe some of those Eastern religious ideas are the things that influences some of the researchers or causes the information to get cherry picked instead of looking at the bigger context. And this is a lot to digest, but I think the one way to kind of solve this is to read some NDEs and see what we discover. Is what are people who are coming close to death, or actually experiencing death, what are they saying about the afterlife? Does it fit in with my model? Does it fit in with what I argue, or does it match more closely to the I don't know how to describe it, like the non-physicalists or the strict dualists who believe that there's physical matter, then there is mind, which may continue to exist, but it's not like you're still you just become source consciousness, and then you have to incarnate again, yada yada. So whatever you want to call that camp, compared to whatever you want to call my camp, like what are people saying from the lion's mouth? So I want to just read some random NDEs and see what we find. So I'm just going to click the first one, posted 11/9/29. This is an amazing website. It's just been regularly updated with NDEs since I was a kid. That's how long I've been reading this site. It was one of the first sites I ever went to finding out about the afterlife. This is NDERF, and I've read some amazing NDEs, but I haven't been to this website in years. And so let's take a look at just a random NDE. The first one that comes up. You have the background information, male, happened 2012. Experience description: I survived an ascending aortic aneurysm. Ooh. I had 2 open heart surgeries within 20 hours. I have no memory or sense of time or duration, only incident. I became part of an intense, brilliant light with no visualization of any entity, object, or being. I could hear a myriad of vocalizations, but could not decipher, interpret, or understand any language. I was at peace, felt like I was part of something, an incredibly peaceful and brilliant peace that I still find difficult to articulate. So this is in fact exactly like kind of that. That I guess you could say strict dualist interpretation, that there isn't, you don't experience other souls or a life of your own. It's kind of obliteration in a sense, while merging with a much higher consciousness where your mind expands greatly. So yes, people certainly experience this, but this is a very low level NDE, and you could, in the sense that it doesn't, there's no tunnel, there's no floating out of the body or looking around the operating theater. It's just this sensation. It's very similar to like Anita Morjani's NDE, but there was like a presence, and there was some kind of a vocalization happening around him, and that is evidence that we're looking at like actual other spirits around him talking. But his consciousness wasn't, he was in the middle of bodily death, and so his consciousness just wasn't quite repaired, and he wasn't even able to understand what these other spirits were saying. So it doesn't rule out sort of my interpretation. So let's look at another NDE and just click the next one, see what happens. Peter S. Probable NDE. Well, I don't want a probable NDE. I want an actual NDE. I see they do have these. Oh, and the top one was also probable NDE. Let's go to a full-fledged NDE. My death experience and return, May 12th, 1973, a long time ago. I was working for the Department of Defense as a contract coordinator, GS-11 with the Military Airlift Command on commercial airline contracts, or Tan Son Nhut Air Base Airport in Saigon, Vietnam. Ah, wow. So this is at the tail end of the Vietnam War. This event happened on May 12th, 73. It was a very beautiful Saturday. It was just a few days before the American combat military and their allies were to leave Vietnam in accordance with the Paris Peace Talks Plan, which is the Marxist backstabbing plan. Ouch. Yes, it's true. So there are many commercial airlines having their commercial jets staged at Tan Son Nhut Air Base Airport at the airlift. Therefore, there was much activity going on at this time. My job was to control all the contracts between the commercial airlines and the Military Airlift Command. The Form 8 was the document that paid the airlines for the work they did for MAC. This pay document was signed by the captain of each aircraft that landed at the Tan Son Nhut Air Base Airport. On May 12th, I left work as usual, riding on my Honda motorcycle. You see these all over Vietnam still today. Oh, I'm going to guess this is going to be a motorbike accident, isn't it? I'm telling you that Vietnam riding motorbikes is never a good idea. And as usual, I followed my buddies with whom worked at the airbase. My buddies almost always drove a six-pack pickup truck. The truck was called a six-pack because it had a front and back seat and 4 doors, so it fit 6 people. It was a Saturday, which was our Friday, since we worked 6 days a week at that time. I always followed my buddies on my cycle, just behind the truck. We usually headed for the my Vietnamese isn't so good, hotel where most of the people I worked with lived. We would go there, kick back, and talk about everything, the war, the women, the world, stuff I talk about usually. And what we're going to do after we go back home to the world, America. As I rode behind the truck, we headed for a lonely bridge that went over a small branch of the Saigon River. Then we would take a right turn on a dirt road that was off the main paved road. This is a long story. This video is going to go way longer than I thought. I have an Afterlife University class I need to get to in half an hour, so can't take longer than that. Just as we reached the dirt road, I saw a commotion off to the right of the road from the tree line, and then I saw a bright light of an explosion around the pickup, and the back window of the truck exploded. So it wasn't a motorbike accident. This was the tail end of the Vietnam War. There was still some aggression happening in 73, I think. I have seen the fog of battle and the haze of misfortune, but I have never seen the mist of unconsciousness that I was experiencing at this time. Dreamlike, yet a realness and a hard substance to where I was. I felt a hard surface I was standing on. I even stomped my feet to make sure that I was feeling what I thought I was feeling and seeing. The room or area I was in seemed to be real and enclosed. As I walked to a huge wall of something that resembled windows, I was greeted by a very tall person, perhaps close to 7 feet tall, that was dressed in a long white robe with long, medium blonde hair and very white skin. Almost, wow, sounds like a Nordic extraterrestrial. This is amazing. This is wow, I'm probably gonna share this NDE with the group. I love it. I felt so alive and very happy and smiling at the moment of just being there for some unknown reason. Also, when I say that I felt alive and that I was so very happy, I mean a feeling that I have never felt, nor have I ever felt that feeling thus far in my life after this experience. Just then a group of small people came from a room or area behind my left side. They were all greeting me, and I felt I knew them and they knew me. I felt a kinship and deep sense of recognition, but I could not distinguish any facial features that would let me know who they were. Not saying they didn't have facial features, he didn't recognize them. Then the tall person gestured for me to go to the large windows. Without speaking through his lips, the person told me within my mind, yeah, astral telepathic communication. I've experienced it a million times. I know other people do too. To watch the window in front of me. Just like a large screen TV, I noticed the windows changed and began to show something like a movie. Are we looking at Akashic past life recollection technology? Indeed, I watched myself, riding my motorcycle from above, and the whole ambush was played out before my eyes in slow motion. I smiled and pointed to the action transpiring before me and was happy and not in shock or anxious about what was happening to my friends and to myself during the process of being killed during the ambush. And this isn't like they get lobotomized. They no longer have feelings about who they were in their old life. It's that, you're realizing that you feel great, you feel healthy, you feel good, and you realize that you were, quote, killed, but your existence carries on. So from a psychological perspective, you're not gonna feel attached to the hunk of meat that you were just in. You've switched to I assume a finer and higher vibrational hunk of meat, which isn't prone to sicknesses and arthritis and toothaches. I tried to look around to see those people just behind me, and just then a large door-like wall was slowly moving open to my left, and a very bright light that was shining from the interior and slowly coming to view. I tried to look closer, but then the tall person said that I could not advance into the light. Not yet, he said, and begged me to continue to watch the large window screen in the ambush that was taking place. I felt content and happy. As I looked towards the light again, the tall person told me to look and started to speak of many things to me, then told me about when I was to pass into the light much later after a full life. I believe he said I would live until the age of 97 or even 107. He also told me that I would have many women in my life, although one would be my last. A woman with a pure heart and soul, and a body of my natural selection, a strong, independent, but somewhat naive of worldly life experience, someone who has never really experienced true love or of her heart and soul, although she will have loved someone very deeply, yada yada yada. Okay, and I appreciate this. I mean, it was a very specific communication. So I'm going to kind of cut it off here. I think. I think somebody had some miraculous healing taking place about how recovering in the military hospital, possibly. Really cool. I think I'll maybe I'll put the link to this one in the description. But so the one curious thing is, of course, the light. But it certainly does seem like the light sometimes it's like a dimensional doorway. And all the conspiracy theorists who have invaded my channel, it's like, oh no, the light's a trap, they're gonna go reincarnate. Well, if there was a plot to reincarnate and that was the evil light, then why would they send him back to this body and say not to go into the light, into the afterlife, right? If the idea was just to reincarnate people, they would have let him die from the ambush, and they would have recycled his soul like you guys claim. So, I mean, I'm not saying the light can't have imposters, but in this situation, these people were clearly his guides, maybe even Nordic extraterrestrials. So it wasn't, most likely the light is that dimensional doorway. You go into the light, you come out the other side, and you're in a higher dimensional plane. You can call it astral or heavenly, whatever nomenclature you want to use. But let's look back again to the big point of this video, which is when we look again at that sort of narrative. So you have the strict dualist narrative that you become formless, vaporous consciousness, or you're incarnated, there's no in-between, versus that there's real, solid other worlds that we go into. And the probable NDE fits with the first narrative. This is a unconfirmed or low-level NDE where somebody had certain sensations. Now, the completely random other NDE that I clicked on, and I've never seen these NDEs before, right away he's talking about how crazy it was to be in a real and physical place. I'm trying to see if we can scroll back to yeah, look at this. I have seen the fog of battle and the haze of misfortune, yada yada yada, yet a realness and a hard substance to where I was. I felt a hard surface I was standing on. Then he meets like this guide who again looks human, but beautiful, angelic looking, but real and physical. He was in a physical solid place, and he was watching what happened through actual physical technology. So physical place, physical technology, physical surface, assumingly a physical astral body. So all of this is a physical higher dimensional existence. It doesn't fit in with the idea of that's proposed by some of these NDE researchers, that the only NDE that's valid, I guess, are the ones where you become a floating orb of consciousness, or you become one with the universe, all of these ideas. So why do NDEs get cherry picked? How come an NDE like this one, like they don't make those conclusions, but like the first NDE that we looked at, you could make those conclusions, but why? It wasn't even maybe a full NDE. When you look at a full NDE, it involves physical worlds, physical other dimensions. And it's funny, this video works out so perfectly. I did not look at these NDEs before I opened up this webpage. We're both here together for the first time. And real quick, let's just skim another NDE real quick before we finish this video. This is the same one, isn't it? This is from an overdose. Kind of just like the first one, so a sensation of expanded consciousness, which is, again, obviously it's a step that happens all during the death process, is that expanded consciousness. But that expanded consciousness, it's not necessarily an experience in what we call an afterlife. It is a sensation or a consciousness expansion, but it doesn't mean that it's a actual, it's the real McCoy, so to speak, of what it's like to be on that side. Here's, it's another kind of basic one. Saw herself from above while she was drowning, and then the experience ended. So there's different levels of NDEs, right? And so when we go to a more advanced NDE, we get the full-blown afterlife. We get is meeting angelic guides, which oftentimes look human, physical, solid environments. When we have NDEs that are kind of scratching the surface, you get sensations or kind of being out of your body or getting an out-of-body vantage point that lasts forever, forever, how much time that may last. And that's kind of it. So there is a scale that even NDE researchers talk about. So the big point of this video, and by the way, hit that subscribe button if you like what I have to say. I forgot to mention this earlier. The point of this video really was that there's no reason to kind of cling to that one narrative, because I don't think it's accurate, and it paints a kind of a sad vision of what the other side is like. Okay, this the main NDE that we read, that paints a fabulous picture. It's a real solid place with other entities who you communicate telepathically, and it's like meeting long lost friends again, and you're getting carried into another dimension. It sounds fantastic. And to me, that sounds much better than just existing as an expanded state of consciousness, and not being you, not having a form, not having a expression of yourself, and not being in a tangible existence or tangible universe anymore. And so that's just my opinion. Obviously people have deep-seated beliefs, deep-seated ideas about this. But I base this opinion off of evidence. I base it off of NDEs, like the one we read. I base it off of out-of-body experiences and spirit communication. All of it lines up together. Stuff I outline in books like this one, The Afterlife and Beyond. Life after death, its consequences for society, and what we must learn. This came out last year, and has a lot of more information from even more varied subjects. So if you like this work, I encourage you to grab a copy on Kindle or on paperback. And and stay in touch in the comments. If you want to join our classes, which I have to go teach one right now, or facilitate a discussion, then you can sign up at Afterlife University, afterlifetopics.com/university. And that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope I made some interesting points. And let me know what you think down in the comments below.